Zoe Williams didn't even make it 3 steps down the jet bridge before the lead flight attendant snapped, loud enough for nearby passengers to flinch. "Oh great! This is the girl they flagged? Perfect. Another little prodigy who thinks she's above rules. Try not to cause trouble before we take off, sweetheart." Her voice cut through the metal corridor like a blade. No greeting, no smile, no professionalism, just instant venom. At 17, Zoe, brown skin glowing with youthful confidence, box braids wrapped neatly behind her shoulders, froze mid-step. She clutched her robotics trophy case against her chest. The woman glaring at her was the kind of person Zoe had been trained her whole life to avoid. Vanessa Kline, mid-40s, pale-skinned, sharp-featured, eyes filled with the type of cold authority that fed on intimidating teenagers. Vanessa leaned in, dripping sarcasm. "Look at you, acting polite. Don't think that halo fools me. I read the notes." She tapped her tablet. "Some kids come on board already thinking they're special. Genius competitions, scholarships. You people always show off." Zoe blinked. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get to my seat." Vanessa scoffed loudly, as if Zoe had told a joke. "Of course you are. They always play innocent in the beginning." The passengers behind Zoe stiffened. Some exchanged awkward looks. A few stepped aside, sensing something wrong but unwilling to interfere. Zoe forced a shaky smile and moved down the aisle. Her father always told her, "Be calm. Be respectful. Don't give anyone a reason." But something in Vanessa's gaze told her reasons didn't matter. When Zoe reached her row, Vanessa suddenly leaned over her shoulder again. "No wandering. No touching anything. And keep those hands visible. Understood?" Her tone was the same one teachers used on children they expected to misbehave. Zoe's heart hammered. "Is something wrong? Did I do something?" Vanessa crossed her arms and smirked. "Not yet. But you will." Zoe sat down slowly, gripping her backpack. She didn't know it yet, but underneath her seat rested a planted passenger wallet, the first piece of the trap. Passengers filtered in. Some glanced at her, whispering. Vanessa had already done damage without saying a single explicit slur, because the racism was baked into her tone, her posture, her assumptions. As the plane finished boarding, Zoe quietly pulled out the small verse card her grandmother had slipped into her luggage. She breathed it out in a whisper, trying to steady herself. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God." Isaiah 41:10. Her hands finally stopped trembling, until Vanessa returned, her heels clacking like warnings. She bent close to Zoe's ear and murmured, "Syrupy cruel. Don't get too comfortable. We'll be having a conversation at altitude." Zoe felt a cold ripple down her spine. Why altitude? Why? Not now? Why did she make it sound planned? And why was the man across the aisle staring at her backpack with a strange smile? Zoe swallowed hard. Something is very wrong. The engines roared to life. The cabin lights dimmed. The trap was waiting above the clouds. If you have ever boarded a flight thinking it would be ordinary, then what happens next with Zoe Williams will make your heart drop to the floor. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow every turn of this true injustice. As the plane climbed into the sky, Zoe had no idea that the moment the seatbelt sign turned off, the accusations would begin. The moment the seatbelt sign blinked off, Zoe exhaled in relief. Maybe she had imagined the hostility. Maybe the flight would be normal after all. But normal ended in the next 10 seconds. Vanessa Kline, still in her perfectly pressed uniform and ice-cold authority, marched down the aisle like she was entering a battlefield. She didn't even pretend to whisper. "Stand up! Now!" Her voice cracked like thunder. Zoe jerked upright. "Stand up? Did I? Don't start with the fake politeness," Vanessa snapped, lips curled in disgust. "You know exactly what you did." Passengers looked up from their tablets. The man across the aisle smirked as if waiting for the exact cue. Zoe's mouth went dry. I don't understand. Vanessa slammed a wallet onto Zoe's tray table so hard it bounced. Recognize this? Zoe shook her head instantly. No, I've never. The man across the aisle shot up dramatically. That's mine. My wallet was missing. I knew I saw her eyeing people's bags. He pointed at Zoe with theatrical outrage, the kind meant to convince by volume, not truth. Vanessa folded her arms with fake righteousness. Well, well. Not even 20 minutes in the air and we've got theft. She leaned forward. You people never learn, do you? Zoe felt heat rise behind her eyes. I didn't take anything, I swear. I didn't even touch it. Vanessa scoffed. Of course you didn't. And I suppose you'll tell us the security footage is fake too? With the flair of someone unveiling a stage prop, she activated her tablet and shoved it in Zoe's face. The screen displayed grainy footage. A teenage girl entering a cockpit access hallway, the frame too blurry to identify clearly. The timestamp from 10 minutes before takeoff, when Zoe had been at the gate. Still, Vanessa tilted the screen so the entire row could see. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced sarcastically, our young award-winning genius here seems to think she can just stroll into restricted areas. Gasps rose like a wave. A woman murmured, Oh my God. Someone whispered, dangerous. Another muttered, entitled kid. Zoe's voice cracked. That's not me. That's not even, I wasn't. You can check. Vanessa slapped the headrest with her palm. Enough! Her eyes glowed with malicious triumph. I'm done with your lying. Stand up. Now! Zoe trembled as she rose to her feet, clutching the seat back for balance. Vanessa paced around her like a predator circling prey. You really thought you were slick, didn't you? Little Miss Robotics prodigy? Little Miss Scholarship darling? You think we don't know who your father is? Zoe blinked in shock. You know my dad? Vanessa leaned in until their foreheads nearly touched. Oh, sweetheart, this isn't just about you. Zoe's stomach plunged. Passengers filmed openly. She felt like she was shrinking, drowning under 100 eyes. The man with the wallet stepped forward again. Arrest her. I don't feel safe with a thief next to me. Vanessa raised a hand. Don't worry. The captain's already informed. Zoe stammered. Please, you're making a mistake. Vanessa smiled with venomous sweetness. No, darling. The mistake was letting you on this plane. The intercom chimed. The captain's deep voice filled the cabin. Miss Zoe Williams is to be detained immediately for security violations. Marshals proceed. Zoe gasped. Detained? What did I do? Passengers parted as two flight marshals approached with grim expressions. One of them muttered under his breath, always the quiet ones, in a tone dripping with prejudgment. Vanessa stood proudly beside them, hands on hips. She resisted instructions, stole from a passenger, and was caught on restricted surveillance. We need restraints. Zoe backed up against her seat. No, please listen. I didn't do anything. Vanessa rolled her eyes hard. Save the trembling act. I've seen better performances from toddlers. The marshals grabbed Zoe's wrists. Pain shot up her arms. Please, stop. Let me explain. Click, the handcuffs locked. Passengers whispered. Phones filmed relentlessly. The humiliation poured over Zoe like boiling water. Vanessa tapped her tablet again. This will all go into the report. Every lie, every I didn't do it, every little tantrum. She spoke the next line louder than needed. Some girls never learn how to behave. Zoe felt her chest tighten. Her breath stuttered. Her knees weakened. The humiliation wasn't accidental. It wasn't impulsive. It was orchestrated, rehearsed, intended to break her. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered her grandmother's verse again, except this time the words tangled in her throat. Fear not, for I am with you. But the verse didn't stop her shaking. Passengers stared like she was a criminal. Vanessa whispered one last dagger into Zoe's ear. By the time we hit the ground, your father's going to wish you never boarded. Zoe's vision blurred. Her legs buckled. She collapsed back into her seat, cuffed, trembling, surrounded by strangers who judged her without knowing a single truth. And overhead, the seatbelt sign blinked on again, a cruel reminder that there was nowhere to run. The cuffs dug deeper into Zoe's wrists with every shaky breath. Her hands were pulled behind her so tightly that her shoulders trembled from the strain. She tried shifting slightly to ease the pressure, but the marshal beside her growled, "Stop moving. You brought this on yourself." The words landed like blows. Passengers who once ignored her now stared without shame, some filming, some whispering, some shaking their heads with silent judgment. The humiliation was a living thing, pressing into her chest harder than the metal restraints. Vanessa Kline hovered nearby, like a vulture circling a wounded animal. She crossed her arms and smirked. "Look at you. Crying already? We barely started." Zoe's breath hitched. "I didn't do anything. Please, believe me." Vanessa leaned down slowly, letting her perfume, sharp and cold, fill Zoe's nose. "Believe you?" Vanessa mocked. "Why? Because you flutter your eyelashes and talk soft? Because you came on board with your little trophy pretending to be special?" Zoe shook her head desperately. "I'm not pretending." "Exactly," Vanessa sneered. "Because you've convinced yourself you actually are something." The marshal tightened the cuffs for emphasis. Zoe yelped in pain. A family 2 rows back gasped. Still no one spoke up. Zoe felt the humiliation coil around her throat like invisible hands. The man who claimed the wallet stepped into the aisle again, performing outrage as if the cabin were a stage. "That girl shouldn't be anywhere near us. She stole my things, tried sneaking around restricted areas, and now she's putting all of us at risk." Vanessa nodded theatrically. "Exactly. And people like her always insist they're misunderstood or targeted. Spare me." People like her. The phrase sliced deeper than any insult. Zoe's breath trembled as tears blurred the overhead lights. She turned her face toward the window, but Vanessa wasn't finished. The attendant grabbed Zoe's chin, forcing her to face forward. Her grip was cold and unyielding. "Eyes on me." Her voice dripped disgust. "When I'm talking, you answer. Understood?" Zoe flinched. "Yes, ma'am." Vanessa scoffed again. Pathetic. The word rang in Zoe's skull. Her breathing quickened, her chest tightened, her heartbeat stumbled into a panicked rhythm. She tried to slow down, tried to anchor herself, but every whisper in the cabin felt like an accusation. "That girl looks dangerous. I heard teens like her do stuff like this. You can't trust them." The air thinned around her. Vanessa circled Zoe's seat like she owned the oxygen around it. "You better brace yourself," she said, "because when we land, you're getting off in cuffs. And trust me, your father's precious reputation will collapse right beside you." Zoe froze. You're doing this because of my dad?" Vanessa's smirk widened. "Oh, sweetheart, you really think this is just about some wallet? Wake up." Zoe's pulse thrashed so violently she could hear it in her ears. She tried to speak, but no words came. She felt herself falling inward, into the terror, the shame, the disbelief that anyone could hate her so quickly, so completely. Her grandmother's voice whispered through her memory. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you." Isaiah 43:2. The verse flickered like a weak flame in her collapsing chest. Zoe whispered it aloud, barely audible. "God, please, be with me, please." Vanessa heard and rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, now she's praying? How adorable!" She leaned close. "Pray all you want. It won't help you." The cruelty was the kind that made passengers look away not because they cared, but because the scene was uncomfortable. Zoe's breathing grew ragged, her lungs tightened as if the air had thorns. The marshal nudged her. "Sit up straight." I'm trying," Zoe wheezed. Vanessa scoffed loudly for the whole row to hear. "Of course she's struggling. Guilt does that." "No," Zoe gasped. I can't breathe." "Oh, please." Vanessa waved a hand dismissively. "Every time someone gets caught, they magically can't breathe. Spare us the drama." Zoe's vision began to blur at the edges. The marshal leaned in. "You better stop hyperventilating. You're drawing too much attention." As if attention weren't the weapon being used against her. Zoe's heartbeat skidded into a painful stutter. The edges of her world flickered. She tried to inhale, but the air refused to come. Her head swayed, her body sagged, unable to stay upright. Vanessa clicked her tongue with feigned annoyance. "Oh, look, she's starting the fainting act." But Zoe wasn't acting. Every sound warped like underwater echoes. Her body slipped sideways in the seat. Her cheek hit the armrest with a soft, defeated thud. Passengers gasped. The marshal swore under his breath. Vanessa stepped back, startled for the first time. Zoe's whisper was barely a breath. "God, help!" And then everything went dark. If you've ever watched someone fall apart under injustice, then what happens next with Zoe Williams will shake you to your core. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices as this true battle intensifies. By the time the plane began its descent, the crew wasn't concerned with Zoe's safety, only with protecting the lies they planned to tell on the ground. The plane began its descent with a tremor strong enough to stir Zoe's limp body. Her head rested awkwardly against the window, breath shallow, wrists still pulled tightly behind her. The cuffs bit into her skin with every tiny movement the turbulence forced out of her. Marshals exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them muttered, "She's out cold. Should we, check on her?" Vanessa Kline shot him a withering glare. "She's fine. She's faking. They always fake it when they're caught." Her voice carried the same icy certainty she'd used since boarding began, like the world was divided into two types of people, those she respected and those she thought beneath respect. Zoe belonged firmly in the second category. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as we prepare for landing. Authorities will be meeting us at the gate for a security situation." A ripple went through the cabin. Passengers craned their necks toward Zoe's motionless figure. Phones lifted discreetly, then not so discreetly. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's the girl. She tried to break into the cockpit, right? I heard she stole something too. Dangerous at that age. Always the same story." Vanessa stood proudly at the front of the aisle, arms crossed, basking in the tension. When the wheels touched the runway and the aircraft screeched to a stop, Zoe stirred faintly. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy and confused. The cabin lights sharpened into painful brightness. She tried to lift her head, but her body felt like it was made of glass shards. Her voice cracked. "Where?" The marshal closest to her barked. "Stay still. Don't try anything." Zoe blinked through dizziness. "Please, I can't." "Breathe right." Vanessa stepped forward, tone dripping mock concern. "Oh, sweetheart, breathing is not your biggest problem right now." Zoe's pulse dropped like a stone. The jet bridge connected, the cabin door opened, and a line of uniformed officers stepped aboard. Stern, unblinking, ready. Gasps spread through the passengers. The officer in front pointed directly at Zoe. "Williams, stand up." Zoe winced as the marshal tugged her arms, forcing her upright. Her knees shook so violently she nearly fell again. I didn't do anything," she whispered, voice cracking into a sob. "I didn't touch anyone's wallet. I wasn't near the cockpit. Please believe me." The lead officer's expression didn't change. "Save it for the station." Zoe's breath hitched. "The station?" Vanessa clapped her hands once, like she'd just finished a chore. She resisted instructions, stole from a passenger, lied repeatedly, and was caught on restricted surveillance. What did you think was going to happen? A woman in row 12 asked timidly, "Are you sure? She looks like just a scared kid." Vanessa spun toward her, smiling tightly. "Ma'am, we appreciate your concern. But trust me, these kids know exactly what they're doing." These kids. The way she said it made Zoe's skin crawl. Officers flanked Zoe on both sides. Passengers lined the aisle like spectators to a public shaming ritual. The wallet. Man stepped out again and announced for dramatic effect, "She stole from me. I want this on record. Zoe sobbed, shaking her head frantically. No, I didn't. I don't even know. Vanessa cut her off with a vicious whisper. Keep talking. Every word helps the report. The marshals pushed Zoe into the aisle. She stumbled. Her bare shins hit armrests. Someone pulled their legs back as if she were contagious. A teenage boy along the aisle muttered under his breath, "She looks like a criminal." Vanessa smiled approvingly. As they guided Zoe off the plane, she felt every stare burning holes into her back. Her cheeks burned with humiliation so fierce she wished she could disappear. She barely made it through the aircraft door before the flash of a phone camera hit her face. Someone outside recorded her being escorted out. She squeezed her eyes shut, whispering, "God, please help me." But her prayer was drowned out by Vanessa telling the officers, "Make sure she doesn't get any special treatment. Kids like her use their tears to manipulate. Kids like her, again." The officers tightened their grip. The airport concourse was already partially cleared for her removal. Security ropes, employees staring. 2 more officers waiting. Zoe's legs buckled. She fell to her knees. "Ow, please, slow down. I'm dizzy. Get up," one officer snapped. She forced herself upright, tears streaming uncontrollably. As they reached the end of the concourse, she saw an airport official holding a clipboard. He lifted a stack of papers. "This is the preliminary incident report, already distributed to media partners." Zoe's stomach dropped. The headline on top read, "Teenager attempts security breach on commercial flight." Her name printed in bold beneath it. "No, no, no," Zoe whimpered. "This is wrong. Please, someone fix this." Vanessa joined the cluster of officers, speaking proudly. "We'll sign off on whatever details are necessary. We all witnessed her behavior." Lies. All of it. Zoe felt the world tilt as the officers led her through a staff-only hallway toward an unmarked door. The man with the clipboard called after them. "Don't let her call anyone. Not yet. We need the narrative stable." Narrative. The word sliced her deeper than the cuffs. As the officers pushed her outside toward a waiting police vehicle, cold air whipped through her hair. Her entire body shook from fear, pain, and the weight of betrayal. She whispered again, "God, please." But her voice was so faint she barely heard it herself. They shoved her gently, but firmly, into the back seat of the car. The door slammed shut. The engine started. The vehicle pulled away from the terminal. Zoe watched the airport disappear through the blurred glow of her tears. She had never felt more alone, more targeted, more helpless. And worst of all, she had no idea that her father had already seen her. Mugshot, plastered online before she even reached the police station. Andrew Williams was in the middle of a conference call with his legal team when his assistant rushed into the office, pale and shaking. "Sir, you need to see this." He frowned. "I'm in a meeting." "No, sir." Her voice cracked. "It's urgent. It's about your daughter." The world froze. Andrew snatched the tablet from her hands, irritation turning into horror as the screen lit up. A headline banner from a national news site. "Teenager attempts security breach on flight, identified as CEO's daughter." Below the headline, Zoe's mugshot, eyes red from crying, face streaked with dried tears, shoulders slumped in a police intake room. Andrew's blood turned to ice. "No!" His voice barely escaped his throat. "That's not... She would never... Where is she?" His assistant swallowed hard. "They took her to the downtown station, sir. The story is everywhere." He bolted from the room, ignoring the startled faces of executives as he stormed past. His chest ached, his vision blurred, his thoughts burned. How long has she been alone? Why didn't they call him? How did this get to the press before him? It hit him like a punch to the ribs. Someone wanted this public. Someone wanted him broken. Meanwhile, in a cramped interrogation room at the station, Zoe sat alone. Cold metal chair, cuffed wrists, eyes puffy from crying. Her entire body trembled from exhaustion and terror. The officer questioning her leaned back, unimpressed. "You're saying you didn't steal the wallet?" "No." You're saying the footage wasn't you. It wasn't. Please, listen. And you're saying the crew made it all up. Yes, he scoffed openly. You expect me to believe an entire flight staff conspired against a teenager? Zoe nodded desperately, tears dripping off her chin. Yes, because they kept saying things about me, things about my dad, things about... The officer waved his hand dismissively. Kid, stop. The more you talk, the worse you look. You people always twist the story. You people. The phrase hit the same painful nerve Vanessa had targeted. Zoe's breath caught. I'm telling the truth. He stood abruptly, gathering the file. Well, sweetheart, truth isn't really the issue here. We go by evidence. And right now, every piece points to you. He left the room without looking back. The door slammed, leaving Zoe in silence so heavy she could barely breathe. She curled forward, forehead against the cold metal table, whispering through shaking sobs. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Hebrews 12:1. Her grandmother's handwriting, memorized on Sunday mornings, echoed in her mind. She tried to cling to it, tried to breathe through it, but endurance felt impossible. The door burst open. Zoe jerked upright. Her father stood there, not composed, not in control, not the polished CEO the world knew. He was shaking. His eyes were red, his face pale, his voice cracked like a man who had already lost too much. Zoe, she broke instantly. Daddy, I didn't do anything. He rushed to her, dropping to his knees in front of her chair, hands hovering because the cuffs blocked him from holding her. Oh God, Zoe, I saw the picture. I saw the news. They didn't even call me. His voice shattered. What did they do to you? Zoe collapsed forward, sobbing into his shoulder despite the restraints. Her whole body shook as if she were made of fragile glass. They said I stole something. I didn't. They showed me footage that wasn't me. They hated me, Daddy. They kept saying things about kids like me. They said you'd regret I ever boarded. Andrew's grief evaporated, replaced by a rising storm he had spent years controlling. His jaw locked, his voice dropped to something dark and dangerous. Who said that? Zoe sniffed, shaking violently. The flight attendant. Vanessa. She said this wasn't about me. It was about you. Andrew's heart nearly stopped. There it was, the missing piece, the motive he had feared but prayed wasn't true. Someone was targeting him and had used his daughter as the weapon. His mind raced, the internal corruption he had uncovered, the executives threatened by his audit, the anonymous warnings, the sudden hostility at the airline board meeting last week. Of course, this wasn't random. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was retaliation, a message, a strike at his heart. Andrew stood slowly, cold, steady, burning. Zoe, everything they told you was a lie. She nodded weakly, tears streaking down her cheeks. I know you're innocent, Andrew said, but someone wants you to look guilty. Someone wants me to look incompetent. And they thought the easiest way to destroy me was to destroy you. Zoe flinched at the word destroy. Andrew placed both hands gently on her shoulders. But they made one mistake. His voice sharpened. They thought I wouldn't fight back. Her breath trembled. She whispered, Daddy, I was so scared. He leaned down and kissed the top of her head. Not anymore. I'm here now, and I am not letting them get away with this. Behind him, 2 officers entered, but Andrew didn't move. He wasn't asking permission anymore. He was claiming his daughter. He turned to them, voice cold as steel. I want the footage. All of it. Cabin video, gate video, timestamp logs. And if any of it is missing, you can explain to the federal investigator who will be here in 1 hour. One officer scoffed. And who are you to demand that? Andrew turned slowly. I'm the man the airline has been trying to silence for months. His eyes sharpened. And the father of the child you wrongfully detained. The officer swallowed hard. Zoe watched her father transform, not into the CEO the world admired, but into the protector she had always longed for. He turned back to her. Zoe, we're getting you out of here. And when we do, his voice trembled with righteous fury, we're going to burn every lie they built. Zoe nodded, still crying but steadier now. Her father squeezed her shoulders. We endure, we rise, and we fight. If you've ever seen a parent rise from pain into unstoppable truth, then what happens next with Andrew Williams will make you believe in justice again. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices as the investigation begins. Because the moment Andrew left that interrogation room, he wasn't a CEO anymore. He was a father on the warpath, and the airline had no idea what was coming. Andrew Williams didn't go home that night. He walked Zoe out of the station with a conditional release. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just a cold, "You're free for now." The charges still hung over her like a storm cloud. She fell asleep almost instantly in the backseat of his car, body exhausted from sobbing, eyes swollen, wrists ringed with angry red marks from the cuffs. At every stoplight, Andrew looked at her in the mirror and felt something inside him rip a little more. They used my child to get to me. By the time he pulled into the underground garage of his tech company, it was after midnight. The building was dark, but his keycard beeped green. The glass doors slid open. "Zoe," he whispered, gently shaking her shoulder. "We're at my office. I just need to do some work for you. Then I'll take you home." She blinked groggily. "Am I in trouble?" His heart cracked. "No," he said firmly. "You're not. They are." She nodded, trusting him in a way that hurt. "I'm tired," she murmured. "I know." He brushed her hair back. "Rest a bit more inside." On the 15th floor, the city lights shimmered beyond the windows. Andrew guided Zoe into his office and laid her on the couch, covering her with a soft throw blanket. She curled up small, like she was trying to disappear. As he turned to leave, her fingers caught his wrist. "Don't let them win," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "I won't," he said quietly. "I promise you, I won't." He stepped into the hallway and dialed his assistant. "I need the forensic team here. Miguel. Naomi from compliance. Our outside investigator. Anyone who has helped with the airline audit." "Sir, it's nearly 1 a.m. I know what time it is. Get them here." There was a beat of silence. Then, "Yes, sir." 40 minutes later, the main conference room glowed with harsh overhead lights. People shuffled in wearing hoodies over pajamas, hair still damp from hastily abandoned showers, coffee cups clutched like lifelines. Naomi dropped a heavy folder on the glass table. "You said it was urgent. What happened?" Andrew didn't sit. He plugged a cable into the wall monitor and threw the headline onto the screen. "Teenager attempts security breach on flight. Identified as CEO's daughter." Below it, Zoe's mugshot. Red eyes, tear-streaked face, defeated shoulders. Shock rippled through the room. "Oh my God. That's Zoe? They arrested your kid?" Andrew's voice came out low and controlled, the only thing about him that still was. "They didn't just arrest her. They humiliated her mid-flight, planted a wallet, showed doctored footage, and fed the story to the press before I was even called. This was not incompetence. This was a hit." He gave them the short, brutal version. Vanessa's contempt, the planted wallet, the fake cockpit clip. Kids like her, Zoe in cuffs, unconscious, dragged off the plane, the interrogation, the line about him. "She said this wasn't about me," he finished. "It was about him, the executive whose corruption we've been digging into." Naomi's jaw clenched. "They targeted her because you wouldn't drop the audit." Andrew nodded once. "So now we stop treating this like a corporate disagreement. We treat it like a crime." He pointed at the wall monitor. "I want everything. Every bite they've touched. Every report. Every timestamp. Every piece of that so-called evidence they're using against her. They wrote a script. We're going to tear it apart, line by line." Miguel, his lead engineer, rolled his chair forward. We've already mirrored the clip that leaked online, the one supposedly showing Zoe near a restricted cockpit hallway. His fingers flew over the keyboard. I'm pulling the original from the security archive. Lines of code cascaded down the screen. Naomi opened the airline's incident report on her laptop. Just so you know, she said, eyes narrowing, there's already a written complaint about Zoe stealing a wallet, time-stamped 34 minutes before the end of boarding. Andrew looked at her sharply. She wasn't even in her seat then. Exactly, Naomi replied. They filed the accusation before she boarded. That's not a reaction. That's planning. Miguel spoke up. Got something? Two versions of the same hallway clip appeared side by side on the monitor. Left is the one they leaked, he said. Right is the original from the server. The difference was subtle, but undeniable. In the original, the timestamp in the corner was stable, clear. The figure in the frame was a teen girl, yes, but taller than Zoe, different hairstyle, slightly different build. On the leaked clip, the timestamp flickered oddly every few frames. The side profile had been blurred more, enough to suggest Zoe without proving it. These artifacts here, Miguel zoomed in. Classic signs of tampering. Their tech tried to patch over old footage with new data. Can you prove it in court? Andrew asked. Miguel nodded. Easily? The logging system also records when files are accessed and altered. Whoever did this left fingerprints all over the metadata. Find the user ID, Andrew said, and trace every time they edited or exported video linked to discrimination complaints. Naomi's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down, then her eyebrows shot up. Our whistleblower just sent something, she said. You need to see this. She airdropped a folder to the main display. Crew chat logs bloomed across the screen. Group conversations between crew members and security staff. Unfiltered, ugly. A message from VK Line. Got the special passenger flagged for today. This is going to be fun. Another. Her dad is that CEO causing all the chaos in ops, right? Maybe this will teach him to mind his own business. Another. We make an example out of his little princess and watch him squirm. Then, from another user, kids like her always play victim anyway. Film everything. No one spoke for a long moment. Naomi's face twisted with disgust. They didn't just retaliate. They enjoyed it. Miguel exhaled slowly. We're past HR issues. This is coordinated harassment. Andrew's grip on the back of his chair tightened until his knuckles went white. Scroll, he said. Naomi clicked. More messages appeared. Wallet's in place under 14B. If she moves, we find it. Harrow wants this airtight. Already filed a suspicious passenger note. Security will be ready at landing. Got clearance to escalate if she mouths off. The higher she cries, the better the headline. Timestamp. 38 minutes before boarding. Andrew's jaw hardened. They framed her, he said, before she even stepped onto the plane. Miguel turned back to his code. I've got the user ID for the video tampering, he said. It's tied to a master admin account, Vero. Victor Harrow, Naomi confirmed, Senior VP of Operations and Compliance, the same man who signed off on every dismissed discrimination complaint we flagged this year. Andrew remembered the last board meeting, Harrow's disdain, his warning. Your audit is destabilizing a key partner, Andrew. If you keep pushing, there will be consequences. Here they were. He buried those complaints, Naomi said quietly, all involving black passengers, all involving the same flight attendant, Vanessa Kline. Miguel added, and he personally exported the doctored clip to a media server 3 hours before the news broke. I can show the connection. Andrew walked to the window. The city beneath him was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. In the distance, airport floodlights still glowed. He had spent years telling himself he could fix systems from the inside if he was patient enough, reasonable enough, diplomatic. Enough. Tonight had killed that fantasy. They didn't just break the system, they weaponized it against his daughter, He turned back to his team, eyes no longer just tired, now sharpened with resolve. "Naomi," he said, "compile everything. Complaint histories, closed cases, chat logs, timestamp inconsistencies, and any evidence of racial targeting. I want it organized into a dossier for federal regulators." She nodded. "I'll prioritize cases tied to Vanessa and any flight she worked that resulted in a complaint." "Miguel," Andrew continued, "I need a visual breakdown of the doctored footage, a version the average person can understand. Side by side with the original, annotated where the edits are. No tech jargon, just undeniable truth." "Understood," Miguel said. "Give me a few hours and a gallon of coffee." "To our outside investigator," Andrew added, "send the chat logs and Harrow's activity trail. I want a legal opinion on obstruction, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations." The investigator on the video call nodded. "This is bigger than one lawsuit, Andrew. This could trigger federal oversight and criminal charges." "Good," Andrew replied. "Let them feel what accountability looks like." Later, as the sun finally pushed through the skyline, Andrew returned to his office. Zoe was awake, sitting up on the couch, clutching the blanket like armor. "Did I cause trouble for you?" she asked quietly. Her voice was so small, it nearly broke him in half. He sat beside her. "No," he said firmly. "They caused trouble for themselves." She searched his eyes. "Can you prove it?" He nodded. "Yes. They edited footage. They planted the wallet. They laughed about using you to send me a message. And the man in charge of compliance helped bury the truth." Her lip trembled. "Why me?" "Because you're mine," he said. "Because they thought hurting you would shut me up." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Will it?" she whispered. His expression hardened. "No," he said. "It woke me up." He took her hand gently, avoiding the sore marks around her wrists. "Today," he said, "we go to war. With the truth." The federal building's marble foyer echoed under the weight of cameras, hushed reporters, and the nervous shuffling of airline representatives who suddenly wished they had called in sick. The long glass panels reflected a tension so thick the air felt heavier than steel. Andrew Williams walked in first, not as a CEO, not as a public figure, but as a father, with Zoe beside him. She clutched his hand lightly, her wrists still faintly marked from the cuffs. Her legs trembled, but her chin didn't. She wore a simple white blouse, sleeves long enough to hide the bruising, hair tied back neatly, eyes focused forward. Whispers bloomed instantly. "That's her, the girl from the plane. She looks terrified. Why would anyone target a kid? Is that the Andrew Williams?" Zoe heard every word. She didn't bow her head this time. Andrew held the conference door for her. "Ready?" "No," she whispered truthfully. "But I'm going in anyway." He smiled faintly. "That's what courage actually looks like." Inside the hearing room, an entire federal oversight panel sat raised on a dais. Not lawmakers, regulators, the type with the power to dismantle entire corporations. To the right sat the airline's representatives, stiff in expensive suits. Vanessa Kline sat among them, arms crossed tightly, knuckles white. Beside her sat Victor Harrow, jaw locked so hard a vein pulsed at his temple. The air smelled of fear, but not from Zoe today, from them. The lead regulator spoke. "Mr. Williams, you requested this emergency hearing with allegations of evidence tampering, discriminatory targeting, and wrongful detainment of a minor. You may proceed." Andrew nodded to Miguel and Naomi seated behind him, then stepped forward. He began with no theatrics. "My daughter was falsely accused, humiliated, restrained, and arrested based on fabricated evidence and a coordinated internal conspiracy. Today, we will prove that." He turned to the monitor as Miguel dimmed the light slightly. "Exhibit A," Andrew said. The screen split into two videos, one labeled original security footage, the other footage provided by airline. Frame by frame, the differences were undeniable. The flickering timestamp, The blurred profile, the mismatched lighting, gasps echoed across the room. Miguel clicked to the metadata summary. Alteration logs, he explained. Time, date, and user access. The edit was performed by a master admin account belonging to, he pointed to the screen, Vero. All heads turned toward the man. Harrow's mask cracked for a moment, fury flashing in his eyes before he smoothed it over with a brittle corporate smile. That's clearly a system glitch, he said. A technical error. An error, Andrew cut in. That only occurred on the clip involving my daughter. Convenient. The regulators scribbled notes rapidly. Naomi stepped forward and held up her packet. This is the written complaint stating Zoe Williams stole a wallet. She slapped the papers on the table. Time stamped 38 minutes before boarding began. A shocked murmur rolled through the room. One regulator looked directly at Vanessa. Would you like to explain how you filed a theft complaint before the accused was physically present? Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her throat bobbed. I wasn't the one who... procedures? She stuttered into silence. Andrew's voice came soft but deadly. You didn't expect to answer for this, did you? Vanessa's eyes darted toward Harrow. He didn't look at her. Naomi projected the crew messages. A regulator read aloud. Got the special passenger flagged. This is going to be fun. We make an example of his princess. Kids like her always play victim. Wallets in place. Security ready. The room froze. Vanessa looked ill. Harrow looked furious. The airline lawyers looked ready to resign. A regulator's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. This is coordinated targeting, racism, retaliation, and intentional evidence planting. Another regulator added, Miss Kline, do you dispute authoring these messages? Vanessa swallowed. I was following orders. Gasps filled the room. Harrow snapped, You signed them, Vanessa. And you told me to, she shot back, trembling. The dam had cracked. Miss Williams, the lead regulator said gently, would you like to say anything before we deliberate? Zoe froze. Her legs shook. Her breath fluttered. Andrew squeezed her hand. You're not alone, he whispered. She stepped forward. Her voice was quiet at first, frail but honest. When I boarded the plane, I thought being polite would keep me safe. I thought if I stayed quiet, the adults would do the right thing. But they didn't. Her eyes lifted to Vanessa, who stared down at her hands. They hated me before they even met me. They decided I was guilty before I could speak. They called me things, treated me like something dangerous, something disposable. She inhaled deeply. And when they handcuffed me, I thought I was going to stop breathing. I prayed. I said the verse my grandma taught me every morning. She lifted her chin. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Her voice strengthened. They tried to make me small, but God kept me standing. And now I'm here, and I'm not afraid anymore. Silence. Not the empty kind. The kind filled with impact, weight, truth. A regulator whispered, Brave girl. Another wiped the corner of her eye. Even reporters in the back lowered their cameras for a moment. The panel conferred briefly. Then the lead regulator addressed the room. Based on the evidence provided, this panel finds significant grounds for federal investigation into discrimination practices, criminal inquiry into evidence tampering, immediate suspension of involved employees, emergency audit of all internal complaint handling procedures, mandatory release of unedited flight footage, temporary grounding of the implicated crew. Vanessa sagged in her chair. Harrow's jaw fell open. The lead regulator ended with, and to the Williams family. Your courage has brought serious misconduct to light. This hearing is not the end. It is the beginning. The day after the federal hearing, the media didn't walk. They sprinted. Headlines flooded every platform. Airline caught tampering evidence. Against teen passenger. Federal probe launched after discrimination claims exposed. VP Harrow under investigation for criminal negligence. And in every headline, another name appeared. Zoe Williams. Not as a suspect, not as a criminal, but as a survivor. At home, Zoe sat on the living room couch wrapped in a blanket. Her wrists, though healing, still bore faint bruises. It hadn't even been 48 hours since the flight that would change the airline industry forever. Andrew entered the room carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You did good yesterday," he said, handing her one. "I felt like I was going to faint," Zoe admitted softly. "You didn't," Andrew said. "You stood." His voice grew gentler. "And I stood because you did." Zoe stared at the steam rising from her mug. "Dad, what will happen to them?" He sat beside her. "Harrow? He'll face federal charges. Vanessa, she'll be fired and maybe prosecuted." He sighed. "But the harm they caused you, that's what will stay with me." Zoe leaned her head against his shoulder. "It doesn't stay with me the same way anymore." "Why not?" She lifted her eyes slowly. "Because I'm not alone now, and because God didn't leave me in that moment, even when I felt like I was drowning." Andrew placed his arm around her, drawing her close. "I'm sorry, Zoe. For every moment I wasn't the father you needed before this." She shook her head. "You're the father I need now." A quiet knock sounded at the front door. Naomi stood outside with a stack of documents and a tired smile. "Federal oversight's moving fast," she said. "You should see the airline statement." Andrew arched a brow. "They finally said something?" "They didn't have a choice," Naomi replied, handing him her tablet. Andrew pressed play on the video. The airline CEO appeared at a podium, expression strained, voice measured. "After reviewing evidence and hearing testimony during yesterday's federal hearing, our organization acknowledges multiple failures in procedure, oversight, and staff conduct. Effective immediately, Vanessa Kline and Victor Harrow have been terminated. We extend a formal apology to Ms. Zoe Williams and her family. We are launching a company-wide reform initiative, including mandatory bias training, an independent complaint board, and upgraded evidence handling protocols." The CEO took a visible breath. "We failed you, Zoe, and we will spend the coming years repairing what our failures cost." Naomi exhaled. "It's not enough, but it's more than I expected." Zoe read the closed captioning quietly. "It doesn't undo what happened, but maybe it stops it from happening again." Andrew closed the tablet and faced her. "It will stop, because you didn't let fear silence you." Tears filled Zoe's eyes, this time not from fear, but from relief. Maybe what they meant for harm, God used for something bigger. Andrew nodded. "That's how he works." Outside, a soft breeze rattled the trees. Inside, father and daughter held onto each other, not to survive, but to rebuild. Later that evening, Andrew walked Zoe into her room. The trophy she'd won before the flight still sat untouched on her desk. "You know," he said softly, "this trophy seemed big 2 days ago. Now it's nothing compared to what you showed out there." Zoe smiled faintly. The trophy didn't matter, but the truth did. She picked up the trophy, not to celebrate the competition, but to honor her perseverance. She whispered, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper," and this time she said it with certainty. Andrew turned off the light. "Get some rest, sweetheart. We have a new beginning tomorrow." For the first time since the nightmare started, Zoe slept without fear. In the end, justice didn't erase what Zoe endured, but it transformed it. What was meant to break her became the very fire that shaped her courage. The lies they built in the sky collapsed under the weight of truth spoken on the ground. Her story became more than a scandal. It became a reminder. Silence doesn't protect the innocent. Truth does. And sometimes the smallest voices echo the loudest when God strengthens them. The Bible reminds us, "The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble." Psalm 9:9. Zoe walked into that plane as a quiet, overachieving student. She walked out as a symbol of resilience, justice, and God's unshakable presence. And her father, once distant, became her fiercest protector, proving that broken relationships can heal when truth is allowed to speak. So may we all stand like Zoe did, trembling, scared, but unwilling to let injustice have the final word. Because with God beside us, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to rise anyway. If Zoe's journey moved you, then what happens next in our stories of justice, faith, and courage will inspire you even more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices for weekly cinematic tales that remind us truth always rises.